Our next speaker is General Ben Adams, and Ben's been a friend for many, many years. What I think probably most of you don't know is he's the Deputy Commanding General for Fort Rucker now as a reservist, but he's also the Chief of Staff of the Joint Staff for the state of Kentucky. So he's juggling both jobs. But he's been an integral part of Army Aviation since as long as I can remember, which is a long time for all of us. So, but Ben's been an integral part. He was involved even in where we worked with him real closely was the 2003 when J.D. Thurman and all of us did the Aviation Task Force. Ben was involved with that, and doing just the opposite of what we're doing now, where we were trying to build aviation up. Now involved in how we downsize aviation with the budget. So it's great to have him here to give the aviation branch perspective. General Lundy again sends his regrets. He's spending every week in Washington D.C. on ARI, so he's pretty much tied up with that. So we're great to have Ben here to provide that perspective, though. Thanks, Ben.
Good morning, everybody. General Sinclair, Bill, Garner, CCAD family, General Riggs, honored guests, friends. Aviation Strong is always our motto. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. And on behalf of General Lundy and the Fort Rucker team, we appreciate this opportunity to provide you an update on the branch. As you can see on the slide in front of you, there's some of the items we're going to talk about this morning. And I know I'm kind of holding you guys up for lunch, but I will spend as much time up here as you want me to, or you give me the hook, I'll be happy to walk off. But again, what we want to do is I want to reiterate the CG's vision for the Army branch. Seeing ourselves right now, what we're faced with, what we're going through, and of course the ARI, which is always a topic of discussion, both heated and or lovingly as we want to try to get through it. But we do need to focus on our aviation strategy for the future. And again, a couple of closing comments. You know, the black box down the bottom is indicative of what aviation is faced with at any time currently and in the future. And again, it poses us to, again, provide that ground commander, maintaining that shared understanding and trust with the commanders and soldiers on the ground. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer either up here or offline if we come up with anything that you want to talk about. Again, the vision. You know, for Army Aviation, that asymmetric advantage that we provide the commanders on the ground, not just for the Army, but also the jointness that we provide. And again, the key parts, that mobility, the lethality, the protection, survivability, and situational understanding in order to win in that complex environment. And basically, regardless of the condition. As you well know, the conditions continue to challenge us in everything that we do. But in order to achieve that vision, we have the priorities listed below in the middle there. We have to be able to build our formations for what the combatant commander and the joint air ground team require us to provide. Now we're going to be doing that through this pure fleet methodology. We are in the process of divesting all the legacy aircraft. As you well know, the 58 Delta and the 67 down at Fort Rucker are our last legacy airframes. And we'll kind of touch on a couple of those where we're at over the next couple of years. But we're also challenged with that disruptive environment, both from a power, a threat, and the visual part and the environments we're currently flying in right now. But we also have to take all the information we've garnered through the years and basically through the TTPs and our unified land operations and build that doctrine that we want to be able to move forward with in the future. But again, we still have to deal with the challenges of sequestration and the reduction of funding. So there's going to be a lot more home station type training, but also building that collective training in the CTCs, both from NTC, JRTC, and so forth. But we have to be able to master that joint combined operations at some point throughout the training time or dwell times that we have. But also, Fort Rucker is looking at several ways of updating the PME that we have down there, both from the warrant officer side and from the Captain's Career Course, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. You know, the cost-wise maintenance that we want to reinvigorate is getting the soldiers out there working hard and troubleshooting, and not just arbitrarily changing something out because they see that it's broken. You know, here from from Corpus, you know, the capabilities you guys provide here has been shared throughout the 15 years we've been fighting, both from the National Guard side with the AVCRADs as they do their rotations, but as we build that maintenance background into what we do every day, it's very, very important for the commander. As an operational guy, I always look to my maintenance and my safety guys to kind of get us through the humps that we go through every day on the challenges of support that we would need. But maintenance, by far, is the leading edge or the pointy end of the spear that gets us through the mission requirements. And again, we want to talk about the mission command, which is optimized for joint air ground operations. But fundamentally, the underpinning of this whole thing is the soldier and the aviator. And as General Milley said, readiness is our number one aspect that we have to work toward. And with all those that I just mentioned with priorities, that's what will get us to our readiness. To kind of give you a quick overview of the challenges that we're faced right now. As you can see, 22 aviation brigades. And basically, you can see how the different operational requirements, whether it's Spartan Shield or Resolute support, has expanded again into another area in Korea. You know, the drawdown in Germany and the requirements we have in Korea, we are spread thin. And the AC and the RC work hand in hand to ensure that we support all these current missions. The dwell times, you know, those are targets. But we also know that the dwell times probably aren't as true as that. We rotate a lot quicker, and we have less time at home, which again puts a bigger burden on resetting and preparing for the next rotation. But also faced with that is the other requirements that are coming up that we have to address as well, both from the global response and Army Contingency Force. You know, 19 rotations at CTC in a year is very difficult. So you come back from rotation, you turn right around, you're trying to rebuild, reset, you go out for another CTC rotation, preparing for your next rotation. That puts an awful lot of burden both on the equipment but also on the soldiers. And the regional line forces and the emergency request for force, especially in the Atlantic Resolve, which is you know, trying to maintain that connection with European forces, and also the Pacific pathways, the expansion we have out there. The teaming with the partnership with foreign nations out in the Pacific is General Brooks's big push, and again, it puts a drain on the organization and the requirements to be able to fulfill each of these taskings. But home station training is still very, very important, not just for what aviation does, but we also have to train with our customers, our BCTs. And that air-ground operation is what we're there for. I mean, we serve the ground commander. But also in amongst all of that, as you well know, we have ARI and the conversions, the modernization program that we have both from the Apaches, the Blackhawks, the Chinooks, and also the fielding of our 72s to the active component for the school, but also what the National Guard uses the 72s for. You know, with Task Force Odin in Afghanistan, that's another tasking that, again, that comes and impacts aviation as a whole, and not just from that side, but also special operations and the multinational requirements. Now, ARI, how do we get there from here? As you well know, the funding for the military for aviation has been cut dramatically. And the $2.5 billion that we're saving is going toward what you see on the far right side of that slide. It's impacting how we do our job. But the savings as a total aviation enterprise engagement, both from the active, Guard, and Reserve, will help us be able to modernize our fleet and have some of the cost savings that we can continue to move forward toward the future in some of the other programs that, as you see below that black line, on the 64 Echoes, the Block 2 on the 47, but also the fielding of the Mike models and the future Victor models as we go into the future. You know, Shadow and Gray Eagle are always a part of this, the teaming, the MUM-T. We get into our heavy attack reconnaissance squadrons, but also what we have to be prepared for on our everyday missions with the Apaches. But also, as you can see, the ASE and the degraded visual environment, these are other challenges toward the future. The ITEP is a 2026 issue, and also Mission Command with NIE and the AWA. You know, what we're going to realize is about a $12 billion savings, which will allow us to move forward with these programs, but also be able to grow and prepare for 2026 and beyond into 2030. Now, this isn't a busier slide than the last one, but just to kind of take a moment to look at, on the far left side, the completed action. There's so many moving parts to ARI and what aviation and the branch as a whole is trying to accomplish over the next 4 years. And this past year, as you can see, we have inactivated units, we've reorganized units. The 58 Deltas, there's 7 squadrons that have inactivated, more to follow. And Fort Rucker, we were building the UH-72 fleet in preparation for the training that we're going to do at the schoolhouse. And this FY, we're going to take 25% of the class that go through Fort Rucker, and we'll start going through the UH-72 as the beginning aircraft. We still have the 67s there, and over time through 18-19, it'll go 25% each year. So by 19, we'll be at 100% with the UH-72s, and the 67s will be gone. The block chart, the flag chart there, as you can see, it's very hard to read. And when you get your slide packet, you might be able to get a little bit more information off of it. But it's just an indication to show the movement of the Apaches from the Guard into the AC side and how that dynamic is moving through the process. We're going to have 48 coming out of the Guard. And the Block 2 requirement that the Guard has, or the AC has for the aircraft that they want, obviously it's not just 2 battalions coming out of the Guard, it's Block 2 aircraft probably coming out of 4 different states. And the consolidation of those aircraft, moving those aircraft is closely coordinated with AMCOM and Fort Rucker We have some going to Missouri. We have some going to California in preparation for movement. As you can see on the right side, the ongoing action, the National Commission on the Future of the Army may impact, it may validate currently what we're doing right now, because right now sequestration, ARI, is a law we are moving forward and we're planning on. But if there's reversibility, that will occur sometime after the March or February-March timeframe when it's briefed to Congress, and what SecDef, General Milley, probably General Talley, General Grass, all the compos come together and work out what the impact may be if there's any changes. You know, we work monthly with AMCOM with ARI transition, both from the movement of equipment, parts, and just making sure that we're all on the same sheet of music, identifying where the airframes are coming from, where they're going to, and ensure that we have a good idea and list of shortages that we have to overcome. It has been a significant emotional event across the board, but we are getting through it. As an aviation enterprise, we have to survive and to ensure that we're providing the ground commander what they need. As you can see, the heavy attack reconnaissance squadrons, you know, we're moving through those, both from 1ID and 25th ID, and those cabs are picking up their airframes. Tennessee National Guard has been picking up their Blackhawks now, divesting their Kiowa Warriors as well. That was a single unit within the National Guard that had KWs. But also the requirements of support at the schoolhouses or the training centers. You can see at NTC, JRTC, Yakima, and Fort Benning, Georgia, there's always an aviation requirement or a connection. And again, I can't reemphasize the importance of the teaming between AMC, AMCOM, and Fort Rucker on the synchronization of equipment as we move through the ARI process. Once we get beyond 16 and we're going into the future actions, you can see some additional changes down toward the bottom on that slide. Again, a lot of this, we believe it's moving forward to what we know currently ARI is calling for. But again, as far as the impact, what the future of the Commission of the Future of the Army indicates or says or recommends, again, we don't know what's going to be accepted, what we're going to do. But again, if somebody else has that crystal ball out there, can tell, people start moving that direction. But right now, that's probably one of the best close hold secrets around. Let's talk about where we're at, where we're going. You know, the 7 core competencies of Army Aviation have held true for quite a long time. And these are the things that are driven by the ground commander. And as we go toward the right, you can see at the top, this is 2026 and beyond, and how we nest those core competencies into the required capabilities into the Army operating concept. Now again, Army operating concept is not nested purely in aviation, but aviation is a key aspect in getting through that or getting to that success. And the unknowns that we have right now is just that. I mean, we plan to what we believe is going to happen in the future, but as you well know, the plan is only good as the first shot fired, then we adapt from there. But clearly, the ability in the planning for the future is being able to operate over that wide area. And down at the bottom, as you can see, the Army forces still want to achieve surprise. And we have to be able to move across both at strategic distance and at the near fight. And again, provide the commander the mobility, the protection, the firepower necessary to strike at any direction and at any time. And as you can see, the pictures of the helicopters and the UAS on the left side, the first 4, are currently what we have. As you go to the right, you can see the future vertical lift, the new UAS, and that is 2026 in the future. And again, the environments, anytime, any place. We have been places that it's tried our aviation branch, but we've overcome and adapted accordingly and continued to train and develop for the future. Now, I mentioned earlier, as part of the priorities that General Lundy has set for Fort Rucker and the Fort Rucker team, is we have to be able to adapt for the future. And General Fasterman said it the best in that quote there. We have to be superior in the art of learning and adaptation. And then to do that, we got to continue to modify the PME and how the schoolhouse works and pushes information out to the field. To save the CAV culture, or to keep that CAV culture, we started a new, and I think it's in its second class now, is Aviation Reconnaissance Leaders course that brought in a lot of the old CAV tactics, techniques, and being able to implement and save that as we go toward the Apache and how we team with the UAS. The professional credentialing as we go through the Army University is important, both from the standpoint of the professionalism of the organization, and it's a goal. And CAC is working very closely with Fort Rucker, vice versa, on ensuring that the professional credentialing in Army University is built into the POI and what we do. We get into the UAS as we continue to modify and grow and get better at what we're doing. We're trying to consolidate on how we manage and fly those airframes. And having a universal type operator maintainer type course for all the different systems we have is a goal that we're working toward. Obviously, MUMT ongoing as the units are fielded. The Kiowa units, the old reconnaissance squadrons, are getting their Apaches. They're also being fielded their Shadows, and it's an ongoing process with the growing aspect of the heavy attack with the UAS, and trying to bring those TTPs in from the field, and again make corrections to how we want to train and how we send things out to the field. And the electronic job book, I'm sure most of you heard that. It's kind of gone through several iterations of morphing. I think the last iteration is there, and it's being fielded as I speak. Now again, the warrant officer and the aviation captain's career course. The warrant officer is key to the success of aviation. It is basically the backbone of what we do from the flying aspect. And obviously our crew members and our maintenance personnel are the biggest part of the backbone. But as we build or basically modify how we teach in our advanced course and the career course, is we want to try to get away from more of the staff stuff and go more toward the operational again. The tactics and doctrine, more information on that to the young captains and warrants as they go through, so they're more operationally ready and not necessarily more staff ready. Defragging and hard drive. General Lundy has spoken about this for almost 2 years now, and it has become a very big part of the language that goes on in aviation now. And again, he's not trying to do away with what some people may think is still important that they don't think is important, but he's trying to impact a better understanding of the tactics and doctrine that we do. And that's the focus of what we have to do in the cockpit, both from the planning and the execution phases of what we do in support of the ground commander. And more importantly, we need to be able to speak and talk with our branch brother. both from sharing and utilizing when they're going through the Captain's Career Course, actually going to the other Center of Excellence, or having those ground branches come to the Aviation Officer Career Course. Nesting and nurturing that along provides a better understanding when you're out on the battlefield. You can talk the same language and you understand the same mission, and it just brings everybody together quicker, and execution is obviously much better and streamlined. Flight School 21, I mentioned before how it's going to be modified and morphed a little bit based on the airframes that we have, but also the quality of the training is still going to be as good, if not better, as we continue to review and update the POIs. So basically, as we go through, the few minutes that I've had up here, and again, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to share some of the points for Army Aviation as a branch and as an enterprise. Our purpose in life is supporting our soldiers on the ground 24/7, no matter what the environment, no matter what the threat. And again, the only way we can do that is to build the readiness within aviation as a whole. And as General Milley has indicated, in the declining funds that we have, sequestration is going to be harder and harder, and we have to be innovative. We have to reinvigorate what we have done in the past in times like this before, and be prepared and continue to move on and support not just the current fight, but the growing fight that's out there. The innovation that we struggle with sometimes, or we don't embrace, we have to be able to keep a broader aperture. And just as this morning, we had a great American come up here, accept that award. He's thinking outside the box, coming up with a tool, another way to better what we do quicker, and the cost savings is tremendous. And as we continue to embrace these innovative ways, and we listen to our soldiers out in the field, commanders out in the field, on what we need to do to be prepared and be ready, is key to everything. And obviously ARI, where we're going, the direction we have, is in support of what the combatant commander on the ground is saying that he needs. So, in closing, last thing, leader development, training to build, and sustain readiness is priority one. And Fort Rucker is prepared for that, and is doing that. General Lundy and the team there by far has embraced the challenges that sequestration has placed upon us. And certainly we are moving forward, and we are not letting the dust settle or the grass grow under our feet at all. And anything that we can do from the Fort Rucker standpoint, both from maintaining and maintenance that we have to do to keep that number of aircraft flying is key to what we do. And again, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come up and have a few minutes of your time to share the branch. And Garner, again, thank you for the opportunity. And sir, thanks for the opportunity, for the invitation up here as well. I know General Lundy would love to be here to share this with you. He could probably be a lot more articulate than I am, but I do kind of like the fact that he has to go to Washington a lot, and I get to go do some of these other things. But again, if there's any questions, I'll be up here to try to answer. If not, I'll have my driver answer them. That's a personal joke.
Guys, we got any questions? Don't be shy. Somebody in here. Usually, this young man named Riggs has got some idea, something going on. Oh, here we go.
Just one quick question. As you're transferring the reconnaissance role into the forts, in other words, with the loss of the Kiowa Warriors, just briefly, how is that being absorbed? I know part of it's training the people, but Part of it's also equipment, and I'm just trying to figure out how that's being balanced between manned and unmanned systems.
Sir, that's a $64,000 question. I think that was been a big challenge from the very beginning. And as we're, and this may not be the solid answer, but I do know that as each one of the units are being fielded to shadow, and again, part of that reconnaissance and that air cav tactics techniques that we had with the Kiowa is being shared with, I guess, this new way of doing business. The shadow, I guess, and the Gray Eagle, as they're kind of placed in these heavy attack units, how we're tying that and sharing that to the ground commander is still being developed. It is still in its nurturing crawl stages. We might be in the walk part of it in some of the units, but there's no hesitation in once these aircraft or the units transition from Kiowa to the Apache and getting these, how they're nesting these two together to build that situational awareness for the ground commander. It is tough. I think the challenges of being able to show what you see on the UAS into the cockpit of the Apache is a challenge that we're trying to work through right now. And again, pushing that down to the commander to give them situational awareness as well. So I think over time, here soon, you'll probably see a lot more clarity in that. But it has been probably one of the biggest challenges that we've had, and not just doing away with the Kiowa, but also, how do we pick up that same capability without loss of situational awareness.
Sir, can I dovetail into
Yes,
that
go
just a
right
little bit
ahead.
from the sustainment perspective? Just kind of update folks. So with the divestiture of the Kiowa Warrior, there are 4 military sales. I know Mr. Marriott would have picked up the mic on this if he was still here, but there's some 4 military sales opportunity out there for the Kiowa Warrior that's being actively pursued. There are several countries that are interested in the Kiowa Warrior, and it's unclear exactly what those numbers are going to be. We've got a lot of Kiowa Warrior material on the shelf, condition code A, ready to go. But my current guidance from General Richardson, from General Marion, and from General Lundy is to not divest any tooling or capability at the plant. We are going to be ready to continue to support the Kiowa Warrior if there are 4 military sales opportunities out there. And in fact, we're seeking partnership opportunities with Bell Helicopter to make that happen. So there may be demand for the Kiowa Warrior in the future. We are going to be ready to meet that demand, and we're going to leverage. We were working a public-private partnership with Bell Helicopter for CASIP. We're going to transition that to an FMS relationship principally, but also we may be able to leverage some legacy and new Bell Helicopter work that's being done for the United States Marine Corps. So we're keeping all those options open at the plant.
Thanks, Connor. Any other questions? I think everybody's hungry. Oh,
We got one right here.
more question.
Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah.
Sir, Roy Hollins, Director of Aircraft Production. Near and dear to my heart is training of our mechanics and our artisans, so we can lessen the knee-offs, so we can, do that troubleshooting. I can remember the day of old when the theory of operation was in the TMs, and you don't see the theory of operation in the technical manuals today. So it really restricts what our artisans or what our mechanics can do to troubleshoot. What are we doing to fix that, to put that back in so we can build that skill and knowledge for them?
Well, I think that is going back to what was on that slide before. When it, let me see, go back a second. Had it in here. The cost-wise maintenance. I think that's all part of General Lundy's thought process. I know we've moved some training from Fort Rucker and Fort Eustis, kind of consolidating some of the MOSs, and getting back to some of the ways that we did things in the past. You're exactly right. I think when some of the biggest problems I've seen in the field when I'm going out to visit is just some of the same comments of, I used to be able to take that book up there, lay it down, and walk my way through it. Get these young kids up there, they don't even know what the book is. So we have to go back and try to fix some of the best ways we did things and incorporate those back into the current way we're doing things right now. But this is being addressed on the Sergeant Major at Fort Rucker. I know he's talked about that a couple of times in the meetings I've been in, and we're working toward. Hang on a second, Sergeant Major. But again, this is something that we have to be able to try to again inculcate back into how we do business, and it's a very good point, and it's seen out in the field. Sergeant Major.
Sir, I was just going to try to help you with that question.
Go right ahead.
Too, but that's the purpose of the job book, and that was a good question. And when I was at Fort Rucker, we had several tables with Sergeant Major Tom.
Right.
And that was the consensus across the Army was that soldiers are lacking that knowledge. So the purpose of bringing that job book back in that all of us as young soldiers had, you have to get signed off on all those tasks, obviously annually or dependent upon the maintenance. But that'll bring that knowledge base back up.
Yeah, thanks, Sergeant Major. And I think that, again, part of the iterations going back and forth at job book has been just that. It's trying to get it right the first time, or get it right now.
Anybody else? Going once. Going twice.
General Sinclair said I had to stay up here for an hour and a half.
You know better than that because there's
sir.
lunch awaiting. So, how we're doing the attack, or how the Army's going to do the attack recon, and Ben is willing to provide a little bit more information based on some of the questions. So before we start the afternoon's program, he's going to spend a couple minutes and flesh that out.
Thanks, sir. I probably soft shoot a little bit more from what General Riggs was asking a question to kind of give you a little more in-depth understanding of how we're going to address the MUM-T and UAS integration into the TAC organizations. As everybody knows, with the drawdown of the Kiowa Warrior and the number of attack units that we currently have, there's not enough seats for all the aviators. So one of the approaches not only is to integrate some of the Kiowa Warrior pilots into the Apache units currently existing in the active component, but also within the UAS organization. So in a way, you integrate some of that, again, the CAV techniques of what we typically do, and understanding what the ground commander is looking for. The aspect of trying to make sure that we don't lose too much of that capability with the vestiture of those aircraft is one of the biggest challenges that aviation has had to deal with in a long time. Ironically, however you want to consider it, the units that go over right now for Spartan Shield over in the Kuwait area, we have utilized from an aviation standpoint a lot of the same UAS aircraft, whether it's Shadow or Predator, into part of the aviation organization there. So in a way, we've already started building that momentum. We've got our first organization over there right now, attack unit, that actually has the Shadows as part of their unit. They've been over there for a little bit. But again, as we continue to grow and the expansion of the Apaches within the attack force, Vice, the Kiowa Warriors, and the reconnaissance standpoint, we are basically building that legacy and trying to ensure that we don't lose that technique that we've had out there. The aperture changed a little bit from the guy looking through the cockpit to looking at a screen that the UAS is providing. But the ability to tell that ground commander information, situation awareness, what's going on is going to be there. So yes, there are some challenges, and we've lost a lot of good aviators that couldn't transition, didn't want to transition. But for the majority of the aviation enterprise, we are working through that. So I hope that provides a little bit better answer to General Riggs' question. But again, it is a challenge. It is something that we have to continue to work at to build the tactics and techniques, and again, integrate that into the schoolhouse and into the training aspect overall. Any other questions, concerns? Did that help answer your question, sir? A little bit better? Okay, thank you.